So I go up to her. She touches me here. Felt like my head cracked open. I was just sobbing. I don't sob. Not that I don't cry, but I don't sob. And it just felt all of this weight was just ripped off. And 1 hour on the table without them touching me, I feel these I see colors. I've never had anything like that happen to me. I'm seeing colors and shapes and feeling this heat. And when I got off the table, it was the best my knee had been in 2 years. I had a sense that one day I would do that for other people. Suddenly I started to develop certain sounds, and I would use these sounds to help people in healing. And eventually, sometimes I would even use them to break up fights on the street. Sometimes people start crying. I don't know why. I just do what I do, and people have the reactions they have. It's easy to say nothing happened.
Yeah.
And I remember one time, this guy, he'd just gotten out of jail. I did a healing on him, and he goes to me, nothing happened, man. And I was like, okay. And he started walking. All of a sudden, he turns around and he goes, I'm a lot more peaceful now.
Welcome to the Endless Possibilities Podcast, where the journey of spiritual awakening and energy healing unfolds.
Hello and welcome to the Endless Possibilities Podcast. My name is Gareth and I'm happy to be here as your host today for another incredible episode. Today we have quite an interesting podcast and conversation. I have on the show joining me Te'Devan Kriyavan Kurzweil. He's been a nomad for the last 22 years, creating a kind of a comedy YouTube channel all about metaphysical phenomena in spiritual practices around the world. He calls his channel the Spiritual Schmuck. He visits holy men, faith healers, and saints and documents it, and he talks all about his experiences. Now, Te'Devan, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a really interesting conversation today. You're a really interesting character. I was just watching some of your YouTube videos prior to us starting the interview. So do you want to tell me what started you all off? I know you've been on a crazy journey, traveling
Yeah.
around, meeting saints and holy men,
Yeah. So, and holy women.
holy women, holy men. Yeah.
The beginning starts off, I have a knee injury in college and I'm really struggling with it. I'm doing physical therapy. I'm doing whatever I can to try to get it better, whatever they tell me, and it's not getting better. And not by any significant measure. And I'm really frustrated. And eventually, in my mom's yoga class at our health club, there's a woman there, and she said there was this couple, and they healed me without touching me. And they did, she didn't know much about it. She just knew it worked. And she said, yeah, they did Tai Chi Qigong. And I said, okay, I'll try anything. And so I go over their house, and 1 hour on the table without them touching me, I feel these I see colors. I've never had anything like that happen to me. I like a lot of college kids, I didn't actually mess with psychedelics or marijuana or any of that stuff. I was always kind of straight edge. I mean, I was outgoing and I was kind of wild, but I just didn't touch any of those things. And so I'm seeing colors and shapes and feeling this heat. And when I got off the table, it was the best my knee had been in 2 years. And at that moment, energy wasn't just this abstract, there's a vibe, a good vibe, and not a good vibe. It was, oh my God, you can literally alter someone's body with this. And that was pretty mind-blowing for me at the time. And I had a sense that one day I would do that for other people. And I didn't know how and I didn't know when. So they had, take this full weekend immersion with their teacher. I think it was $1,000. Maybe it was a few weekends. I don't remember. But I remember thinking, that was a lot to me in college, but I would have gladly handed it if I knew at the end of that time that I would definitely be able to do what they did. But I thought, well, I'm going to be the one, guy that takes the class, and I'm not going to be able to do this. And I was like, I don't want to shell out that money and not succeed at whatever this is. So I passed. But I did have a sense when they were working on me, I would do this one day. And what was really funny was when they were working on me, they just kept saying to me, "You're so grounded. You're so grounded." And I didn't know what any of that lingo meant. And I just went, "That's good?" And they said, "Yeah." I said, "Cool." And that was the extent of it. Fast forward a year later, I'm graduating the University of Michigan. And there was a Tai Chi Qigong master that was there. And I would see him out by this. I went by the Cube is what they called it, and he'd be doing Tai Chi Qigong with a few people, and sometimes we would make eye contact, or at least I felt like we did, just briefly as he was doing it. And my friend's dad was a chiropractor, and he said, "Yeah, you just call." This is a long time ago. Yeah, just look him up in the yellow pages and give him a call. And so I did, and it was a very quick conversation. And he's like, "Who told you?" And I told him who told me. He's like, "Okay, come over." And that was the conversation. And in his presence, I would go into a coma sleep every time. It wasn't until the third time that it happened that I realized I wasn't tired. It was something to do with the energy, and it was just knocking me out. And that was when my abilities started to come forward. Now, at that time, I didn't know that. All I knew was that something strange was happening and I needed to keep showing up. Until a few months later, when I went back to New York, so 9/11 happens. And I drive by the World Trade Center on September 10th in a friend's car. And I look up and I think, I wonder what would happen if that building fell down. That was the only thought I had, none of the other stuff, just that. The following day, it falls down. World's kind of crazy. And within the next 48 hours, I was with that same friend in her car outside my parents' house, and she was having an angina attack on her heart. If you don't, those that don't know what it is, usually it happens to older people, sometimes younger people if they've done lots of speed type drugs, which she had done at one point. And then the stress and the anxiety of 9/11 sort of brought it up. And without thinking about it, I just sort of reached out my hand and I felt this weight over her chest. And I just pulled it away and she stopped crying. And she said, "What'd you do?" I go, "I don't know." And she says, "Well, it doesn't really hurt." And I go, "I guess that's good." And and I knew something had happened, but she had a very high opinion of me. So my logical mind said, you can't fully trust her. But I started going up to random New Yorkers at a bar, at a train station, especially if they showed any clear signs of pain. And I say, "Hey, this might sound funny, but I think I can heal you without touching you." And yeah, and I made a sign and I started walking around the streets, offering healing and just going on wherever this adventure would take me. As well as I was also a street performer. So people would also pay me to freestyle rap. And then oddly enough, sometimes that would then they go, "Well, what's the healing thing about?" And then they would opt for that as well.
Fascinating. You don't look like a rapper though.
I just
Um,
I like rhyming. I listen to a lot of Wu-Tang and a lot of other Far Side Camp Low, and I just was quick, and I would just go off, and they would pay me to rap about anything on the spot. So it was all freestyle. It was just made up in the moment.
Yeah, it's funny because when I was growing up, I was about 14, 15. I used to have all the cassette tapes, and we used to listen to Snoop Dogg and
Hmm.
all the California rappers.
Yeah, yeah.
I was watching some of your videos earlier. You're 6'7" as well, so you really 6'8", 6'7".
6'7", probably 6'8" with my sneakers on though, right? Like so it must appear that way. Yeah, I
So you
imagine.
really
Yeah.
stand out, right? Walking
Yeah,
around with a sign.
yes, it was I'm sure it was quite a spectacle. I mean, when you're really tall, you don't think of yourself as really tall unless you see yourself in a mirror or video. Or the other, my favorite one is I'll be sitting somewhere and someone really tall will walk by with someone much shorter. And I'll look at them and I'll go, "Wow, they're really tall." And then I'll usually, not always, I'll be like, "And I'm taller than them." And therefore I realize in that moment that I'm tall, but it's just I'm pretty oblivious to it. No matter how much people tell me, it's just it doesn't I don't care. It doesn't it's something that I get excited about.
Okay, so clearly you started to discover that there is like an unseen energy that can heal
Yeah.
people. It
Yeah.
probably got your kind of curiosity going to
Yeah.
discover more. And I
Yeah.
know then you started traveling, right? So do you want to talk a little bit about how you
Yeah.
that?
So from there I just kept I would share my healing gift and it would just lead me into interesting situations. I remember once, I mean this was years later, but as an example, I was down in Miami. I met a commodities trader who'd stepped away from his firm and was just, trading for himself. His shoulder was bothering him. I did a healing. He put me on the phone with another commodities trader who was very active, who had a production company, and I was living in a loft in Soho for a little bit. It wasn't the time, but it was to develop a series about what I always want to do is I want to film miracles around the world. I want to show that miracles happen in every place, every culture, every region, and that they, that we don't necessarily have to understand exactly how they're happening, but they're happening. And I wanted to do it with a sense of humor because I don't understand why, when there's a miracle, we can't occasionally also crack a joke, respectfully.
I'm the same, right? I don't think spirituality should be so serious.
Yeah,
I've done a lot of things. I've seeked out a lot of avatars and and a
right.
lot of it's very serious. The followers, no talking, silence, all this
Yeah,
kind of stuff.
yeah.
Whereas I like cracking jokes, and I kind of found your humor. I was watching your videos earlier. You have a great sense of humor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me then, like, where did you start going? Who did you find first?
The first one so I mean, obviously there was the Qigong master, right? And that was a transmission that awoke in me, but I didn't put that together. It wasn't until 2 years later, I was telling some guy in Central Park about my journey to my healing gift. And he goes, "Oh, sounds like that guy awoke in your ability." And I went, "Oh." I I
Yeah.
I hadn't put it together. I just had a weird few experiences sitting on his couch, and then later suddenly I was healing, but it didn't. It's so obvious, right? But at that time, I think I was meant to have a block because then I wouldn't have wanted to leave Ann Arbor, Michigan. I would have wanted to stay there, and obviously I was supposed to be in New York, and so each place led me to another place. Key West, Florida was a very significant place on my journey. That's where suddenly I started to develop certain sounds, and I would use these sounds to help people in healing. And eventually, sometimes I would even use them to break up fights on the street. I've done it a few times that people will be getting in it, and then I'll just make this very high pitched sound. My throat's a little scratchy right now, so I'll try my best, but it's and they just kind of don't know what to do, and it kind of just if it's the tensions up here, it drops a bit, and it's
Wow.
led to a lot of funny situations. And sometimes people start crying. I don't know why. I just do what I do, and people have the reactions they have.
Hello, I hope you're enjoying the show with Te'Devan. This is just a quick request to those who are not already subscribed. If you would like to help this show out, it's a great way to support us by hitting subscribe. Subscribing to us lets YouTube know that we are a worthwhile channel and they push us out to new audiences through the algorithms. And it's free. You don't have to do anything. It's just hit subscribe. You also get notifications every Friday when we release a new episode. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the show with Te'Devan. And on an intellectual level, you don't really understand what you're doing. It's just something is working through you, intuition.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always been that way for me. I mean, I've read up about stuff and different theories to how, the mechanisms of why it is what it is. But I've always just been, if you're psychic, I don't care how you're pulling it off. Do your thing, I've always been that way. I think even in sports, you'll have like baseball is really popular. You have a baseball hitter and he'll study every pitcher and how they do what they do. And then you'll have another guy that just gets in the box, stays present, and then just, listens to his intuition and swings. So I guess I'm more of that type.
And did you have any inkling about like enlightenment or a spiritual awakening? Were you a
Yeah, so I
seeker?
yeah, yeah. I always was a bit of a seeker. I was obsessed with death since I was 3. So my grandfather dies when I'm 3 on my birthday. And I don't actually remember so much about him other than the smell of his pipe and that I would send balloons to him in heaven, which later I found out may have been responsible for killing sea mammals. Wasn't my intention. I learned that through school programs. But that was kind of the beginning. I was always thinking about it, and I remember going on a teen tour with a bunch of other teenagers, and the guys would be in the tent, and we'd be talking, and I say, you know what? I get really excited about something, and then it happens, and I get excited about something else, and it happens, and I'm just one step closer to death. And they all just burst out laughing. They thought that was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. And I started laughing because they were laughing. But that was really my thinking. It was just, okay, so I did now, oh, I'm closer to death and I still don't know what this is all about. I still don't know why I'm here. And so I always had that. I was always, what's the point of this? Like, so I do this, then what? What am I aiming for here? So I think I innately had some sense of that. And I even think kind of funny, we think about movies like The Karate Kid. So I kind of had this idea that there were people that, had access these unseen energies and were able to cultivate things in a way. And I knew that I would eventually come to seek them out. When I was in Key West, I find the book Autobiography of a Yogi at a Juice Bar, and I just devoured that book. And as I'm reading that book, I'm thinking, I'm I'm gonna find these people, the modern version of them. And that became a real passion of mine was finding them. And the first one, the easiest one to find in the US is the Hugging Saint. So I saw her quite a bit. And then inevitably, I was led to Sri Amma Karunamai. And I just saw her in Houston and Austin and a few other places. And I had just the most profound experience with her right out of the gate. So I'd had a parting with a woman at that time that was really emotionally gut wrenching for me. And I was thinking, well, what could I have really offered her anyway? Like, what's so great about my love? My love isn't that great. Like, you know, it's not this cosmic, enlightened love. And I sort of thought, I guess the only love that's really worth anything is a love from a saint. And I said, I guess that's something I should strive for. And in that process, I saw this is when I was staying with that commodities trader. He had a Krupalo magazine, and I was flipping through it, which is something I would never do. And I saw a photo of her, and it said she was coming to New York. And I was on my way to go actually see Hugging Amma in Seattle. And I thought, well, another Amma's coming to me, so why go anywhere? I'll just stay here. And I remember when I looked at her photo, I just started talking to her, and I would just write down her schedule. And if you'd asked me about it at that moment, and you'd be like, "Why are you talking to her?" I go, "I'm just strange. That's why I'm talking to her." That would be what would have told you. So I show up to see her. I'm really excited. I get a bunch of friends to come, all different spiritual temperance, including one guy that was kind of an atheist agnostic. And she walks past me, and I've never seen her do this before or since. Before she gets to her chair, she does a full stop, full turnaround, looks right at me, smiles and waves. And I kind of know that's what happened, but I'm also in kind of disbelief. And then my friend, I don't know this at the time, the guy the atheist agnostic turns to my other friend and goes, "It's kind of strange how all you weird spiritual people seem to know each other." And at that moment, I thought, well, if I'm delusional, at least I share my delusions with an atheist. So that felt good. And I sat there for 6 hours, meditating the best I could, especially back then. I mean, 6 hours was an insanely long amount of time for me, but I'm doing my best. And I feel a lot of peace. But then something else comes. Suddenly, I'm angrier than I've ever been without a reason. And I think I'm going to implode. It was so horrible. And I had this thought in my head, and it goes, "You weren't this bad of a person 20 minutes ago. This is probably going to pass." And I said, "Okay." And I was even thinking about leaving before I got my official blessing. So I go up to her. She touches me here. Felt like my head cracked open. I was just sobbing. And I don't sob. Not that I don't cry, but I don't sob. And it just felt all of this weight was just ripped off me. And then she told me a few things about my life and my journey, and that was the first time I saw her. For the next 3 years, she wouldn't say anything to me other than "I love you, my son." And then in the fourth year, she started telling me to come places, and she started saying other things to me. So it was kind of this big opening, and I would continue to see her. And after the third year of "I love you, my son," and nothing else, I started to get a little frustrated. And in my mind, I was like, "Come on, anything. I don't care what it is, just something different." And it was funny. She does this thing. I call it the fake out. She'll leave, and if you don't know any better, you think she's left, and a bunch of people will leave, and then she'll come back in. And
Interesting.
I'd never experienced that at that time. And I was talking to someone in a deep conversation, And she came back in and she looked at me and she goes, I love you, my son. And then that time, it was right after I had the complaint, I felt this well of emotions just kind of come up in me. And she was telling stories and she said, he was tall like you, son, you know. So suddenly suddenly I'm in this, the story and that, but then the following year, she really started, telling me to come places and she talked about Arunachala. And at that moment, this is 2012, I knew I'm gonna go there. I'm going to Arunachala, and I would end up there in late 2014.
Okay.
I would end up there.
So, for those who don't understand who these people are, do you want to just
Yeah,
briefly, like a saint or an avatar, like
yeah,
Amma or this other
yeah,
Amma or Mother Mira? Do
yeah.
you want to quickly tell people who
Sure,
these people
sure.
are?
So I look at it as an avatar is, you're always getting people debating, is that person an avatar or is that person a saint?
Yeah,
As far as I know, they're way beyond where I am. But to me, an avatar would be a maker of saints.
yeah,
And now a saint would just be someone who basically is liberated. They're not caught in any of the illusion anymore, right? They don't fear anything, they don't want anything, and they're always in a state of peace. Avatar, and I'm trying to simplify this, and I'm sure other people could give a better explanation, but an avatar would just the simplest way, they would be a being that awakens other saints
yeah.
to their divinity, to their sainthood. They would be a being that helps to make many people liberated, many people self-realized, and often will help to mitigate natural disasters and to make sure that wars don't turn into even larger, more dangerous conflicts. So they're here to sort of keep some semblance of peace, no matter how wild and unfortunate events may become. So that's how I would explain it. And from a technical standpoint, an avatar is considered divinity fully incorporated into human form.
Yeah, in a body. Do you keep a connection with her? Is there like a non-physical? Does she come in your dreams? Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, she does. Amma Krunamai I feel often she's guiding my life. I mean, even right now where I am in Houston. So this is a perfect example. I go to a Vipassana. Now, at a Vipassana, you're supposed to do a certain technique. Please forgive me, all the Vipassana acolytes out there. I wasn't doing the technique, and I was thinking
you're
of my
like
guru
me.
a lot.
I
I'm
never
like,
stuck by the rules of anything.
yeah. I was like, hey, it's 10 days of silence. I'm not going to make any noise. I'll be quiet and I'll meditate. It'll be a good vibe. And at the end, though, you talk, right? At the end, a lot of people do, it's over. And I meet this monk and we start talking. And I mention I'm a Kurunamai. And he goes, she saved my life. And, sometimes people use that somewhat hyperbolic. They were emotionally devastated. They didn't feel a reason to, they were really depressed. Life was hard. And I kind of had a sense he actually meant it. And I said, well, tell me. And basically, it'd been 2 years since he'd seen Amma Kurunamai. And it was easily over 1,000 miles away or more. And he had told a friend of his about Amma Kurunamai. So she goes on individual blessing day to see her. And she's online, and Amma looks at her and goes, you have a friend, monk, American. And he goes, yeah, yeah. She goes, he's bitch. And, that's a pretty jarring message to get. So she immediately gets on, the computer, starts emailing him and says, you got to get out of there. And turns out he was sweating to death and he didn't realize it. And
Wow.
he goes to a hospital. They pump him full of fluids, and he immediately starts to get better. And he left India. He was a very lucky man. But she'll do stuff like that. That's just a throwaway miracle, Just kind of. Then she goes on doing what she's doing and talk to the woman about other situations, and then the next person. It's just this constant, well, just tremendous love. First off, just an undescribable.
Wow.
And, until you've had the experience, there's nothing I'm going to say that's really going to be able to point to it from my perspective. But the other thing that, also happens is, I guess you could call them the candies. There's a lot of miracles around them. And it's a lot of synchronicities. And it's just beautiful. And I also, one of the things I love is just sort of introducing an unlikely person to go see a saint and watching the experience they have, even when they claim they don't believe in it, when they think it's nonsense. It doesn't, I say, people say, oh, do I have to believe in healing for it to work? And I say, if it's raining outside, You don't need to believe that you're going to get wet when you walk out that door. That's just what's going to happen.
It's funny because I brought my dad to see Mother Mira and Amma, the hugging saint. He went up for his hug and he came back down and then the two of us left and we got in the car. He didn't even know his own name. And I said, I said, how was it? And he's like, yeah, no, I didn't feel anything. And I could see him. He couldn't even fathom a thought in his mind. He was completely, wasn't my dad for about, 45 minutes afterwards, after receiving a hug. But to him, he would tell you nothing happened. I didn't get anything from it whatsoever. But I could see different.
Well, I think one of the big things is I think they're expecting a more physiological response, right? They're
Yeah.
expecting. So I used to see a Qigong master in LA, Master Zhou, and he would burn you without touching you. He would generate that level of Qi, right? So, if your father was to go to him, it'd be a lot harder to say I didn't feel anything because he'd be screaming hot, 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 and moving the hand as they move the hand around the body. So I think that's part of it. And when you don't necessarily value your mind being empty,
Mm,
and you don't put that as like, wow, this is a really beautiful thing, it's easy to say nothing happened.
yeah.
And I remember one time, this guy, he'd just gotten out of jail. I did a healing on him, and he goes to me, nothing happened, man. And I was like, okay. And he started walking. All of a sudden, he turns around and goes, I'm a lot more peaceful now. And he went on his way. And so, you know, I I think sometimes people expect maybe a little too much from the hug or the experience, especially if they're really digging their feet in that this isn't legit. Sort of instant enlightenment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
anything short of that is nothing happened. And to be fair, in a deeper sense, he's not wrong. Whatever is happening was always there. It was just sort of uncovered a little bit.
Yeah.
I know that's not how he was probably thinking of it, but in a sense, he's not wrong in a sense.
Yeah. Um, so you ended up in Arunachala.
Yeah, that was amazing. So Amma Kurunamai's mother's guru was Ramana Maharshi. And Ramana had told her mother that you will give birth to the mother of the universe.
Oh,
And basically, like, you can't stay here. She didn't want to go out into the world. And he's like, you gotta go. So she has a couple kids, and eventually one of them is Vijayaswara Devi, who I know is Sri Sri Amma Karunamai. And so she talks very glowingly of Ramana very frequently. And that particular day in 2012, when she had told me, "I love you, son," twice, and the second one really hit me, I knew I was going to go there. And my friend had just been to India, and there was a Vedic astrologer there, and he'd given him my chart. And one of the things the guy said to me, he said, "You'll be in faraway land late 2014, early 2015." And it just seamlessly came together. And this was my second trip to India, but it had been 7 years. And I was a very different person than I was 7 years prior. But I remember I get there and I show up on Deepam. I had no idea it was Deepam, but that was this big, big holiday there. And tons of people coming. So it was kind of chaotic. And I remember one of my first funny experiences is I walked into a dosa shop on the side facing the mountain, almost like 11 o'clock at night, pretty late. And I sit down and I meet these three French people, one woman and two guys. And all of a sudden, very quickly, we all just went into a spontaneous deep meditation. And we're all just kind of vibing like that for quite a bit. And I knew the mountain was what they said. And it was amazing. I was just in this state at a dosa shop with three French people. And we just all just kind of stopped and went
just
into
went
the
in.
state.
You went into Samadhi, right?
I'm always very shy to use any particular language to what I'm going into or not. There wasn't a lot of thought and I was very blissed out. And I'll say. But it was amazing. And I'd had other experiences like that, but it was certainly very deep. And there was no physical guru in front of me, but as they'll say there, the mountain itself is a guru. And you've had so
Shiva.
many saints there. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So where to next? What happened next?
So I go there, and then I eventually go to Amma ashram a couple days later, and did a meditation retreat. And what was really interesting was, and I think everyone has a different experience when they get to holy places or holy people. But for me, as I mentioned with the Qigong master, it knocks me out. And I was so exhausted at her ashram. I couldn't believe it. It was as if I'd been running marathons. And the logical part of my Western brain thought, I'm eating too many carbs. I'm going to dial back my breakfast. This is what it is. And that day that I decided to make that decision, she's walking past me and she goes, "Son, eat more." And she really doesn't talk much to people at these events. And I just thought, wow, okay. So clearly it wasn't carbs, but it was just the energy is just so strong, and your whole nervous system's getting reconfigured. And one of the things that happens is it just knocks you out.
Do you think she's able to read your mind somehow?
Oh, she's done it to me so many times. I honestly have lost track. But when I was there, I don't know if it was this trip to India or another one. We went to a temple, and I didn't like that we were rushing. It wasn't particularly something I was fond of, and there was something other like complaint I had in my head. And I go up to her, and she hands me the plate. She goes, "Son, so many people are waiting. This is why we have to go so fast." And she just goes right into, conversation about it. But I think the most extreme version of it was one year, Indian New Year was approaching. And New Year isn't really the regular Western calendar. New Year means nothing to me. I don't like to drink. I don't smoke. I don't even feel it's a new year. Indian New Year was approaching, and I remember thinking, I'm pretty much culturally Indian. This is my New Year.
Hmm.
And I didn't give it any other thought. I go to see her in Georgia. It's a month and a half later. I had this thought, if I held this thought for a minute and a half, that might have been, the peak extent of it. And she sees me, and she doesn't raise her voice very often. And she looks right at me and just me. And she goes, "Happy New Year." And I'm just confused, right? Because at this point it's late May. And I don't understand. And there's about 30 seconds. And I go, oh my God, she's responding to that thought that I had a month and a half ago about basically, being culturally Indian, and that's my new year.
It's great. Do you think she knows, or it's just something that works through her in that moment to get you a message to you?
I think with psychics and channels, I think that's what it is. But I think for what she is, she just she's existing in that. But there's so many things that she's knowing, right? So I guess, that file gets pulled, and then she decides to reinforce it or really bring it up. But I think she exists in that state of knowing, and she'll turn it on to certain people at certain moments because of the karma. Not everyone's meant to have that experience. Recently, I met a guy at a comedy club, young guy. I think he's 22, just sober last couple years, and he went, and I just had a sense he was gonna, and she talked to him quite a bit. And then he got two of his other friends to go see her in another city, much further away. And one of them, she just started talking to him about his new job and congratulations on the new job. And he hadn't said anything. So for the right people, she'll let you know that she knows. And
Mm.
I just don't think everyone's meant to have that experience. Other people see her and they think, oh, she's very peaceful. She's very nice. I appreciate the charity she's doing. And that's kind of their takeaway. But for other people, she drops the boom on them. She lets
Yeah,
them know, hey,
it's kind of like when I went to see the Huggins Saint, right? It's like, there's thousands of people. And some people you see crying, and some
yeah,
people, oh, I got a hug and it felt nice, and, sat back down and went about my day. I didn't even know. I thought it was in India. It was in Ireland. But after I got the hug, there was all these Indian people. And I was like, how did I get to India? I was like, I didn't even know who I was. I just sat there going, uh, I couldn't understand. It was like as if I was just teleported somewhere. But
yeah.
not everybody gets that.
No, not everybody does. And I think it's a combination of ripeness, but also certain people are meant to be the one to give you the experience. If you remember an autobiography of a yogi, he meets one particular great yogi. I don't remember the name, walks around with him a little bit, and he gives him a certain experience. And then he says, but your guru will give you, this other experience later. It's not for me to do that.
Yeah.
And so I also think there's an element of that. And for some reason, we just have stronger karmic connection to certain beings. And so they're the ones to give us that experience, to draw us in closer. And what one really lovely yogi saint that I met him only a couple times, but his name's Gurudev Brahmarishi. And the first time I see him, he materializes a little stone for me. And I thought, okay, that's cool. I've been blessed to see materializations before. And for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, in most simplistic terms, there's nothing in my hand, and now there's a mango, or there's, an apple or a statue of Krishna or whatever it might be. And they're not moved, it's just like, boom, here it is. So he does that, and I lose it because I'm a nomad. I lose things all the time. And I go to see him the next year. Now, the next year, I have two thoughts in my mind, very clear thoughts. One is, I need a bigger version of that stone. And my other thought was, I want to have perfect sight from here. Because I started to realize the only reason I get upset, the only reason I get angry is I don't see things in their totality. I'm only seeing things from the lens of the world that I know from this lifetime. And I thought, if I could actually see things as they were, I'd never have to be angry or upset ever again. And that was why I wanted perfect sight. That was what was motivating it. And I go up to him, nothing kind of happens. I get offline, and this guy comes up to me and he goes, "You know Carla?" I know a lot of people. I've met a few, so I don't even know what he's talking about at first. And then he shows a photo of me and Carla in India at his ashram. So Carla was this woman from Portugal that I'd met at Kurunamai's ashram, and on our way to Arunachala, I said, "Oh, let's stop off at, Gurudev Brahmarishi's ashram in Tirupati." And so, and he said, "Get back online." I said, "Okay." So I get back online. Everyone starts screaming at me because you're only allowed to be online once. And I go, "I know nothing. That man told me to get online." And I guess he was a head honcho, so everyone quickly stopped yelling at me. And I'm waiting online, and I get back up, and he materializes a bigger version of the same stone. He then says to put it here. Now, this next part, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think initially the stone was dark on top. And then he said, "Put it here." And then he said, "May Shiva give you supreme sight." And then it went from dark to white. That part, the dark to white thing, I'm not 100% sure, but I do think that happened. And I was just in awe. Not that he just materialized another stone for me, but a bigger version. And then he'd spoken to my much deeper prayer. And that actually was something that would come up later, maybe 8 years later when I got my Nadi leaf reading, which was pretty cool to see.
Okay, so what changes are going on with you? Like, are you changing as a being? Are you becoming more loving? Is there
Yeah,
spiritual awakening, self-realizations going on, being in the
yeah,
company of these
yeah.
gurus and
I
saints?
I would say I just I think from my perspective, as you get calmer and calmer, it's harder it's harder to notice it because there's part of you
There's
that
no
feels like
contrast.
I've
Yeah.
always been this way. But what will happen is because I travel so much and I meet so many people, I would run into people that hadn't seen me in a while. And they're like, "Oh my God, you're so much calmer. You're so much more grounded." Or I would meet someone who doesn't believe in any of this stuff, and they would, I guess, from their viewpoint, have some sort of psychedelic experience around me. And I know nothing, really. I know nothing. I just know enough. You're a holy person. I'll sit here. Let's let it happen. And that's kind of how I go. I just sort of this wandering fool that's just drawn to saints and holy places, likes to chant a lot of mantra, likes to sit, and just is almost fearless about approaching anyone that I feel guided to talk to, and remain open for people to come and talk to me. So it's created a lot of very interesting and funny and bizarre situations in my life. And it continues to this day. And I feel very thankful for their presence and their guidance, the ones that are still in physical form and the ones that aren't. And I try to get other people to go get these blessings. And I've also
Yeah.
made peace with the fact that not everyone has the karma to go. And the closest experience they might get to it in this lifetime might be meeting me. And that's what it is. Of course, I always want them to go see them, but I can't make people do anything. So,
No, no, you can't. But I mean, like you have a great way of talking about it, right? Describing these experiences and I have to say your story is very, very similar to mine. I was the same. I had a fear of death. I always wanted to understand what the death process was. Um, the autobiography of a yogi, my favorite book of all. I cried when I finished it, like absolutely devastated that the book came to an end.
yeah.
And then I was on the same mission, seeking out certain beings. I knew I had to go see them, sit in their presence, receive something. And it did. It changed me on all levels. Like really, it really, really did. So I mean, you really don't have to sell it anymore. I mean, to me, but for people listening, like
Yeah.
how important is it to go and find these avatars and saints and go and receive their blessings? If
I'm
you're on
gonna
a
use the best. I'm gonna use the best analogy I've ever heard. Imagine you decide you want to climb the Himalayas, and you've never done anything of that magnitude. You're gonna want a Sherpa. You're gonna want someone to help you get to the top of the Himalayas. You're gonna want supplies, prepare. You're gonna want all of that. Now imagine trying to do that with no understanding of what you're doing and no Sherpa. The spiritual journey is more treacherous than that. That would just kind of be how I'd look at it. There's more pitfalls, there's more
yeah.
challenges, there's more unexpected obstacles. There's one of the best books I read about tapas is by Shiva Rudra Bali Yogi, and I've been blessed to see him a few times. He actually goes to England usually as well, and to the U.S. And he's a devotee of Shiva Bali Yogi, who was a great yogi from Andhra Pradesh who did tapas at a young age and literally deformed his hands. His hands were like this his whole life because he did these extreme, extreme tapas. And Shiva Roja Bali Yogi writes about the tapas experience and all the things that happen when you do tapas. And I think one of the things that I found so fascinating by it was all the things that I thought were so hard that in my mind, my ego mind, I was like, well, I would have quit right there.
Do
He
you want to
goes,
just
that's not the
quickly
hard part. Yeah.
quickly tell us what tapas is?
So I guess Ramana has a definition of tapas, which is like anytime, any sense of the individual I emerges, you watch it and dissolve it. But Shiva Bala Yogi's definition was basically a minimum of 8 hours in samadhi with no movement, multiple times a day. Generally, you're doing 18 hours, and in Shiva Bala Yogi's case, 23 hours a day. You're barely physically interacting with, you're just going to the bare minimum of what it takes to keep the body still here and not leave. And Ramana, we don't know the extent of what his tapas were, but he did something like that too, even after he had his enlightenment experience, perhaps for the benefit of the planet, perhaps for, what was ahead. I don't know, but he was also known to have done a very long tapas in those caves up there in Arunachala. But Shivaruja Bala Yogi is a medium-sized little short book, and he goes into all of the minutia of what happens when you do tapas. And for him, tapas doesn't even start until he was able to see everyone was already his guru. He could see his guru in everyone. He was already in this state where a lot of us would say, "Wow, you're there." And then he goes, "No, that's now tapas begins." And now you start dissolving these astral karmas and these causal karmas and these much more subtle things that most of us may never delve too deep into in this lifetime. Most of us are just, I don't want to come back to earth. Let me get moksha. Let me get liberated,
That's what
right?
I hear most people, they don't want
Yeah,
to come back. They just want to get off the
yeah,
planet, right? Yeah.
yeah. There's a lot of people trying to hit the eject button. But if it's coming from a place of fear, if it's coming from a place of, that place, aversion, then they're not going to get that. It has to come from a place of overcoming the the fear, overcoming the desires, overcoming the attachments, being able to see that no matter how difficult or messed up this place may seem, it's exactly what it needs to be for the lessons that we need to further along our spiritual journey. It's perfect.
Mm.
And that's not a thing that most people want to hear or want to even look at the world as, or they see you as, rose-colored glasses. And it's not denying the suffering, it's not denying the starvation and all the things. It's just to say that this is what it needs to be right now for the karmas to work themselves out. And that's what it is.
That's beautiful.
And it's for you to deepen your peace in a way that can therefore ignite other people to want to deepen theirs.
Mm. Te'Devan, you mentioned the Nadi leaves. Do you want to talk a little
Yeah.
bit about them? Because I got them done as well.
I love them. So for those of you, I think the best Western way to describe Nadi leaf readings is Edgar Cayce, Akashic Records. Now, a lot of people, especially in the New Age world, man, they throw around that phrase Akashic Records
Yeah.
all the time. But I believe that, objective based mediumship, you need to be able to tell me something about myself that nobody should know. It shouldn't be these very vague comments. You're a spiritual seeker. You've been here many times before.
It's your
I
last
could say that to
lifetime.
almost
Yeah.
anyone. You're an old soul. Yeah. No, they'll go into the minutia of your life. And, you had the experience as well. They knew my parents' names. They knew
Me too.
particular health issues. They
Yeah.
knew family dynamics. And going back to the yogi Gurudev Brahmarishi, one of the things that they said to me, and I guess maybe in the back of my head, I was curious if it would come up. And they said at some point, and not in this point in linear time yet, they said all 7 of your chakras will fully open and you'll see the past, present, and future of yourself and anyone you come in contact with. And that was his sankalpa for me. And it was really cool to hear that then show up many years later in a Nadi leaf reading. And I was like, oh, okay. And I don't have that sight yet. I'm continuing to strive to peel away the layers of Maya and that there is a me so that I can exist from that place. The funniest way to think of it is if you've ever watched Game of Thrones, and I'm sure some of you may not, it is pretty violent. There's a character
I've
called
watched
Bran the Broken. Yeah, there's a character called Bran the Broken. And really, they don't call him, but really he's sort of a self-realized yogi, for more or less, that sees through all time and all space and, sees the past and the present and what's to come.
This is the young guy that's the crow turns up with the one eye, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They dropped his storyline for the final season, sadly. They really didn't go into it anymore. But I really enjoyed his storyline because it was the closest to, Ramana or something along those lines, Obviously some tweaks, but, more or less that was who he was meant to be.
Were you happy with your reading?
I was amazed. I went in with high expectations, which is not, they always say don't do that, but I couldn't help it. I had
did
friends
too.
that had great readings. I remember one when I was at Amma Ashram, I met this guy. He's an American guy, lived somewhere in Southeast Asia, a business guy. And he went many years ago and they told him, they said, your father's really sick and he's going to pass soon. And you need to repair that relationship or you're going to have to be reborn. And he went back home. He said, Dad, you got to go to the doctor. And his dad was terminally ill with cancer. And they repaired the relationship and that was taken care of. I think a lot of it confirms things but I think sometimes it can sort of warn you for challenges that are up ahead. And they'll also give you remedies. And some of, there's 3 types of karma. I'm sure you're familiar with this. There's a karma that can't be changed, it's fixed. A karma that can be mitigated, and a karma that can be completely removed. And it's difficult for us to know which karmas are which, but we got to try the best we can. And so I just find it really fascinating. I'm hoping to get another one soon. This guy's writing a book about it. And I just think it's such a fascinating topic. This is a beautiful thing. And I'm curious as to some of the remedies that I've done, which things may have been tweaked a little bit as a result.
And the detail that they can go into, like literally like names and ages, and it's
Yeah.
incredible, really, really
Yeah.
incredible.
And
Funny
they
enough,
and they got the point when I met the Qigong master. They dialed in on that too. They go, everything kicks off at, 2000, 2001, and 2000 I get my knee healed. 2001 I meet the Qigong master. So they really knew when it all kicked off for me.
yeah, it's funny when I got mine done, I had been kind of working with this Indian guru, and they knew his name, they knew where he was located in India, and they were kind of looking at each other, going, "You're working with an Indian guru," and I was like, "Yeah, yeah." So yeah, it's amazing. There was a lot of stuff in it though that I didn't like, and I destroyed mine. I was like, okay, I don't want that to happen. And a
Yeah.
lot of the stuff changed. I said, look, I don't want that to play out, and I decided to delete the files, and I kind of energetically cleared it from my system, and it just, that whole avenue that my life was going in stopped, and it kind of just,
Wow.
yeah, it took a different turn. So I do
Do you
think you
mind
can.
do you mind sharing what you deleted? I mean, if it's too personal, I understand, but that's
It,
pretty
it, it, it
fascinating.
it is personal. It was really personal, but I just didn't want that to I mean, they got details, names, and it was like, this is going to happen, and this is where you're going to go. And I was like, oh, okay. And I could see that that was happening in my life.
Wow.
And yeah, I just went, you know what? I don't want that to happen. So I deleted the readings. That's not to say I wouldn't get them done again. It's just,
Yeah.
I just think
Well,
that
it's a
we,
trajectory of where you are right now, and that was the trajectory of where you were then,
yes,
and
yes.
without the kind of honest gut check of, hey, this is where you're going. Do you want it?
Yeah.
And you got that, you
Yeah, at
know?
that point in time, right? And I do
Yeah.
think that we have free will, and we can say, okay, no, I want my life to go in a different direction. So I did. I
Yeah.
put it in a different direction.
That's
But
so
it would
cool.
be,
Yeah,
yeah, go
go on.
ahead.
Oh, I had a friend of mine in her reading. So there's this beginning part where they're trying to find your leaf.
Yes.
And I didn't know what that was about, but she kind of helped me create a theory, a working theory that is different potential timelines that you may have gone on. And they're trying to figure out which one you're on. And I got this because in hers, they go, do you have metal in your left leg? And she said, yeah. And they go, do you still have metal in your left leg? She goes, no. And they go, not this leaf. And then they go on to the next one. And so that's one theory. The other theory is there's so many of us, there's karmas that are really close, and it could, so I don't know for sure, but I do lean towards the idea that these different leaves that they're kind of filtering through are potential
Yeah.
alternative timelines that
Yeah.
you could be on.
Yes, I totally agree, right? If you had to stop them and said, no, actually no, and they picked the other leaf, then it might be a different timeline that you could venture down. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, fascinating, fascinating.
Well, I
And
hope you'll
and
write about that experience in a book one day, because the deleting thing, because those things, I mean, I find that really fascinating when someone makes such a clear delineation from whatever their supposed destiny is.
yeah.
I think that's a really fascinating experience, and would love to, any you put any writing out about it, would love to read that.
Okay, okay. Um, right. So Natty Leaf readings. Okay. After that, where were you? Yeah, led.
Oh, so that was more recent that I did that, but it's just been an ongoing journey of seeing different saints as it works out, dog sitting, cat sitting, traveling around. I very much live like a sadhu in many ways, and I just get sort of have these appointments, and I never know when they're going to come up, and I just sort of continue to pursue what feels right to me, and just go down the avenues that present themselves.
So okay. So are you like a digital nomad, right? Because you've started a
So
YouTube
I
channel.
do, yeah. So I just started to build out my YouTube channel. It's called Spiritual Schmuck. It's a little tongue in cheek. The idea behind it is that, to a secular person, the weird stuff I'm doing, I just appear like some schmuck, but it's some spiritual schmuck. They don't know,
Mm,
and I try to make it accessible to regular people with the series. So I did 7 episodes of this trip to Cuba. It was very to find El Machete. He's a machete psychic surgeon, and it's my journey to go there and find him and have the experience and interview other people that have had the experience.
Okay, so you kind of played it down, right? Because I was watching your video earlier, and you were kind of like, and after having a conversation with you, there's a lot more going on, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
okay, so let me get this straight, right? My sense is that you're kind of seeking out these people. Are you rating them? Are you somehow sort of like going, okay, this guy is legit, this woman is not legit.
Yeah.
Is that
Well,
kind of
so
what's going on?
no, I'm trying to surmise that they're legit ahead of time, so that
Okay,
I'm just going to kind of mostly entirely only have experiences with people that are the real deal.
yeah.
And, I can't say I can do that 100%, but I can usually talk to enough people that have had the experience to kind of know, okay, this person is probably going to be the real deal.
Okay.
And I had a lot of people from Cuba reaching out to me on TikTok about their experiences with him. So I felt comfortable about letting him use the machete on me.
I
Otherwise, if
watched
I
it. It
didn't,
was wild. It was like, for anybody, I'll link down below. Go and watch the video. It's insane.
yeah, it's a wild journey. I had to take a leap of faith to say the
Totally.
least.
Totally.
Yeah, and I just find all the different modalities and all the different ways that people come about their mystical abilities to be really interesting. His process, he would swallow metal needles every day, 7 of them, little sewing needles. And he said they didn't come out the other end. And he said he did it so he didn't take on the sickness of the people he worked on. And that was what created some sort of wall around him. So he didn't, take on all the issues of the people. And I'd never heard of that particular technique before. So he kind of reminded me from, if I look at it, if he was to be in India, he would be in Agori, you know, just like he ingests rum, there's smoke, he eats metal and he's able to transmute it into something else. There's a lot of things about him that were very Agori like. I know his tradition, he's coming out of Santeria and Palo, which I knew a little bit more about at the time because I had to do research for it. I'm not as knowledgeable now, but yeah, it's fascinating seeing, everywhere you go, someone's doing a miracle and they're getting to it in a different way and a different process. And that's really what I want to do is I want to show the kind of in your face miracles, if you will, not the more subtle ones, and do it in a way that's serious and comedic and let people, decide for themselves.
Hey, Devon. So I've been doing this as well, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the times these like transmissions and miracles, they can happen, right? But when you stick a camera in front of it tends not to want to show itself, right?
Well,
Maybe it goes against the
yeah, I
rules
think it
or
depends. I think it depends. I think some of them are very comfortable doing it. And some of them, that's a big no-no. The guy in Cuba, El Machete, Jorge Goliat, he was very like, film me, turn on your phone, let people see. And that was how he did it. And I've known others, Rigio from Brazil wasn't shy. La Pachita, I think she allowed a bit of documentation. I'd have to double check. But so there are certainly ones that will. And then you're right. There are a lot of other ones. They don't want the attention. I'll give a perfect example. There's a Filipino woman named Esther Bravo. She's a psychic surgeon in the Philippines. They just stick their hand inside your body and pull stuff out. Now, of course, you're always going to get fakers, but from everything that I looked into Esther, I didn't have the pleasure of experiencing her personally. She looked very authentic. It was all donation based. She didn't want any press. The most I found is someone wrote an article about her that went and her photo. She seemed to me to very much be the real deal. And she did not want to be recorded. She did not want that documented. And others, they'll allow it. They say, okay, I let's show some people. And I think we're in such a skeptical time anyway that even if people see the most tremendous miracle, they'll go, oh, it's AI. Oh, it's this
yeah,
count. It doesn't
yeah.
even matter. We're in a time where I would say the wow factor a lot of times would be less than what it used to be just because people are so skeptical and jaded. So yeah, sure, show. And the ones that are meant to be drawn, hopefully for deeper reasons than just to see a magic trick, will come, right? Because they don't want their goal is to help people get self-realized, not show
Yeah.
off magic,
And,
right?
and so, like, have you come across the ones that are doing magic tricks?
Well, I've
Without
come
naming
across,
anyone, without
yeah,
naming
yeah,
anyone.
sure.
Yeah.
I've come across ones that I would say are doing real magic, but they're not enlightened. And
Okay.
they're very caught in the Maya. And they're just flashing cities and getting the benefits of that.
Okay. Okay.
And
So,
I've
so
seen
making a
that.
business. Yeah.
Yeah, making a business, but also just taking advantage of people, and definitely not primarily interested in people's self-realization. More interested in their own glorification.
Okay.
And they talk about that in Autobiography of a Yogi. There was one guy that Sri Yukteswar met. He went to a party and he could touch anything, and if he touched it,
Yes.
he could walk away and he could materialize in his hands. And he was just robbing trains and jewelry stores, and even he robbed the host that night of his very fancy. He got it back, but after a very large bribe. So he eventually has his redemption moment later as well, though. He learns from that. Um, but yeah, there are definitely people out there that magic for them is a means towards what a means to an end, what they want in this world. It's
Yeah.
not it's not they're not trying to serve humanity.
So they're after like followers and
And
fame.
other yeah, they're just like anyone else, except they have magical powers. In
And
a time and a world that people don't believe those things exist so much anymore. So that's also really interesting. Um, the just I find that it still intrigues me, just kind of what that can do to the psyche. You have this ability in a time when people don't think that those abilities exist anymore.
yeah.
And so when you do it, it creates a lot of friction, and you're doing it from a place of let me show you, let me wow you, let me show you who I am, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I was watching your video earlier with the guy with the machete, and I mean, he went to your side, and then like I was like, oh, why did they blur it? I wanted to see.
Yeah, we didn't mean to. Some of one of the surgeries we had to blur because YouTube would not allow that in there.
Yeah.
The other one was just it happened so fast. There's a metaphysical, supernatural element to what he's doing. But the one for the kidney, I'll tell you, the
He
next
took a
day,
stone out, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
the next day I had sensations there all throughout the day. So I got another one down low. And
Yeah.
that one,
Fishing
in the
tackle.
moment, I felt it. Yeah, that one I felt in the moment and it hurt. And when it was done, it was like all nothing. The other one, I felt a lot going on in my kidney the next day, a lot. And I just felt a lot more energized. And out of the two, the other one I hadn't tested out, seeing if I could get a woman pregnant at a certain point. But the other one, I definitely felt a lot of the immediate benefits for the kidney, and was like, oh wow, okay. And I'd been to a qigong master in LA, Master Zhou, and he said kidney qi on that side was a little bit weak. So I knew he had mentioned areas that the other guy had alluded to. So that was kind of my he uses like a candle and wax, and he does a
I
little
was
scan.
watching.
Yeah,
How do you think he's tapping into your reading? What's like how is he kind of scanning your system and coming back with that information?
yeah. So he told me his muertos tell him what to do. So if he doesn't have his muertos, he wouldn't really know. And they just say, do this. And I think whether it's Origio or La Pachita or him, they're working on a different dimension. I mean, I've heard stories, and I think it was La Pachita. It could have been someone else, where the stuff they would do, everybody should just die immediately after whatever they did. It's so bizarre. She apparently La Pachita would grab a cadaver if the person had a problem with their kidney, take a kidney out of the cadaver, throw it inside the person, close them up, and they were good to go. Just whatever you thought was, not sanitary or a little risky was compared to what some of the other people will do. They're working on a different dimension. It just looks
Yeah.
like it's happening here, but it's
Yeah.
going on somewhere else.
I mean, Meher Baba, I used to watch videos of him and he's got the lepers in front of him, he's washing their feet, no fear, right? There was another one, a really old video of the Huggin Saint
Mm.
with a leper, and she's licking his wounds
Oh,
like a.
you've seen the video of it.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, yeah,
Oh, see, I've heard of that story, but I never actually, that is, yeah, lick. I mean, and for those of you that don't know, because if you're living in the developed world, those wounds, they
yeah,
smell like death.
yeah.
It smells like death from what I've been told. I haven't got a chance to be up and close with it, but it's dying. It's intense. And so the idea of licking that.
She's licking it like a lollipop. Yeah, yeah. It's remarkable. It's remarkable. So, any other miracles in front of your eyes,
Oh my God.
Te'Devan?
So many. I mean, obviously, you know, and we know, and I do want to emphasize this, the biggest miracle is your own self-realization, right? To
Sure, sure.
to do that. And this is kind of the lollipops, or the candy to kind of inspire people that I would say are a bit more materialistic, a bit more in the world, to say, hey, no, there are these things and they do exist. Um, there was another psychic surgeon I saw. They all kind of a little different. And one was in Mexico, and he takes this scissors and he cuts you, but he didn't actually cut you physically. And I remember I was in physical pain all that night. It hurt all night long into the early morning. The place I was staying, he's like, your eyes look different, like definitely look like something happened. And it's very fast a lot of times.
Yeah.
But I remember I just thought it was really interesting that, and he puts bandages on you, even though he hasn't physically cut you, and you take the bandages off the next day. But it definitely felt in the moment, it feels like he's cutting you. And then throughout the evening, I experienced a lot of pain and discomfort. And then by the morning, that had left me. So that was really interesting to watch, that process. Um, and I've had experiences where just really gifted clairvoyants have just rolled up on me and just started telling me things about my life. And I think, at this point, it's more like, oh, thanks. That's really cool. I appreciate it. But in the earlier part of your journey, that kind of confirmation and affirmation really means a lot more.
Yeah, it's
It has a
huge.
lot more significance. And I remember one of the first great clairvoyants I met was a old black Cherokee man at Penn Station around 3 in the morning. And he just comes up to me and he's like, you'll heal my feet for me? And I was like, sure. And I just start healing his feet, tells me my mom's name, describes the girl I'm dating, name all of my good friends. And I knew he was different. I'd spotted him before he came over to me. And he just looked like he had a suit on from the 1950s or 60s. He had a cane. He was a character. His name was Akashan. And I ran into him 2 other times, and he was really forgetful. I had to remind him each time. He go, "Oh yeah, I remember." And I
He
was
hadn't a
like,
clue,
"How
had
many,
he?
how many 6, 7 white guys heal you at the train station?" Like, I don't understand. So it always made me laugh. But he was a character, and he was he told you what he saw. He didn't pull any punches. And I remember though, he gave me the reading and then he started saying stuff that didn't apply to me. And this young black guy just slid over and goes, "No, that's for me." And so I started to realize a little in that moment, but more later, there's just sort of a radio antenna, right?
Mm.
And it could be a couple feet this way, a couple feet that way sometimes. And someone else is wanting to come through and use them to deliver these messages and get this out. But yeah, he was really gifted. I mean, he was in his 80s and this was like 20 years ago. So I imagine he's passed on now. But I always think of him. He always brings a smile to my face, Akashan. He told me he used to be on Coast to Coast back in the 80s from time to time.
Okay.
So if any older listeners out there know who remember
Yeah.
Akashan or know who he was from that, that's really cool. I haven't ever met anyone that knew who he was and had a conversation about him. I'd be curious to know more about his life.
Did you
But
look
I
him
know
up?
that, I don't even, I think I tried once. I wasn't successful. I guess I could try again. I don't even know exactly how you spell Akashan. It's not like he handed me a business card. So I would be speculating just on the
Wa-
spelling of his name
Was he
alone.
even real?
I think he was because I did see him 2 other times. But I asked him how he knew I could heal, help him out. And he's, oh, I saw a halo above your head. And I was like, oh, okay.
Interesting. Okay,
That
okay.
was I was like, okay. But yeah,
Um,
he was great. I
what
still
about
think of
your meter, right? Your kind of your BS meter, your reader. Like, do you think you've got a good kind of sense of?
Yeah, I think in person what this is always about, watching something online. Yeah, I think I've definitely kind of honed that in. But sometimes the BS just so obvious to me, and I'll just kind of be looking around. I go, how's nobody else? How did nobody else pick
Has
up
there
on
been
this? Like,
has there been anyone that you've kind of gone, I don't want this person working on me?
yeah, I guess not anyone that was like famous that everyone was touting. No, no, but I
Yeah,
think, you'll meet people along the way, and I'll just kind of go, no, it's not.
yeah,
No, I'm not really. Um, I think just anytime you encounter someone that has such a large ego, but also I'll say this, surgeons, really great surgeons sometimes have the largest egos. And, if you need that type of surgery, they're still really good at what they do. Doesn't mean you want to hang out with them
yeah.
and have a smoothie later, but,
Very true.
they can still be really good at what they do. It would be nice if they were humble, and I'm sure there are those that are great that are humble, but some of them definitely develop that God complex. And
Yeah.
I think some gifted, I remember there was a guy from Brazil. I never met him, but he would travel to the US a bit, and he went to a party. He worked in IT, and he just blacked out, and he did a cataract surgery. And when he came to, he was like, wait, what? He hadn't. And then he told my friend, he said, well, the women came and I like the women. And the money came and I like the money. And he's just kind of this regular guy that wasn't on some, at least from what she told me, wasn't on some profound spiritual quest. He just blacked out at a party and did a miracle. And then he just
Wow.
kind of kept doing it. And so, I just think the world is so much more nuanced and complicated than, we want things to be so this or this. And a lot of times things are gray. Um, and I think ultimately also people do have a lot of their own potential to heal themselves, but you gotta believe that, and you gotta be willing to do what it takes to awaken to that.
Mhm.
And that demands a lot of honesty and inwardness, and it's not always that easy to do. So there are reasons to sometimes seek someone out for certain situations.
Yeah, so I kind of get the sense that this interview, right, you're really sort of giving people an autobiography of a yogi, right? It's like, it gives their mind, oh wow, there's all this stuff is out there, and I can
Yeah.
find it.
Yeah, that I
Yeah, yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah. I get
Yeah,
that.
I was so inspired by that book as a kid, and then later there's another book called Holographic Universe that I
Yeah, I've
eventually
heard of it.
stumbled on too. And I just love how for people that want more of the science, it gives it uses quantum physics explanations of, well, this is how we think that miracle would potentially transpire, right? Like this is how that would happen. And yeah, that book was really influential for me as well. And I really love just, listening to that. And even, you talking about earlier, deleting certain files from the Nadi Leaf reading that you didn't want. You made that decision.
Yeah.
And, obviously that was a karma that could be removed, right? Because as we've discussed, some karmas, you try as you may, you won't be able to escape them. But we don't know, right? So we have to do the best we can to say no, I don't, and then erase what we can erase that can help us to have more peace and more love and more just all the beautiful things in life.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'd be really keen to have you back for part two if you would be
Yeah,
interested.
no,
Because I mean,
absolutely. I
I think we could talk all day here, right?
No, absolutely. I would love that. I'd seen Julie had gone on your podcast, and I go, oh, that'd be great to get on there. And I've always enjoyed talking to the Irish on my
Yeah,
travels.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I've only been to Ireland once. Actually, I did go to a place there. It was a Saint Kevin. I went to wherever Saint
Glendalough,
Kevin's.
Glendalough.
Okay. Yeah, wow, that was.
Yeah, it's
Oh my
it's
God.
25 minutes from where I live.
Well, yeah, I was enamored with that whole vibe out there,
The
the
lakes,
energy.
the
Yeah.
old churches. Yeah, yeah. You've
Oh
seen
my
all that. Yeah,
God.
it's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And he
Do
had a little
people?
cave as well. Did you find a cave?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He might. I don't know if I saw his cave, but they had a little plaque, Saint
Yeah.
Kevin. So does everyone out there, is Saint Kevin like a big
No,
deal, or he's
no, no,
no,
no.
he's been forgotten with time.
No, yeah, I mean, look, I think there's a lot of people who are drawn to go to that place because there's beautiful energy in it. But
Yeah,
I don't know if Saint Kevin is the reason behind it. But in Ireland, we are very blessed to have a lot of saints here as well.
yeah,
Saint Bridget, Saint Patrick. There was a lot of holy people have come through
yeah.
this little
It's
island.
kind of crazy to think what St. Patrick's Day has become
Yeah.
relative. You know, maybe St. Kevin needs his own day as well. We could. I really don't know much about him. I found his little spot, and I was just like, wow, this place is amazing.
It is an amazing place. Yeah, yeah. So anything you feel I've left out? Is there any last messages you'd like to give to the audience, the viewers, listeners?
I guess if you can't meditate as much as you want, if you can't do spiritual practice as much as you want, just figure out ways to integrate it more throughout the day. So you're waiting on a friend, maybe you know a little Tai Chi Qigong. Why not do that while you wait? As long as you're able to not care what other people think, you can kind of take these little moments throughout the day to go inward. Because at the end of the day, that's what I want. I want people to deepen their own practice. I don't want people to just sit there and listen to my experiences and go, wow. I want them to go out and have their own.
Yeah.
And I want them to deepen their practice, and I want them to follow their heart. And even if you do meet some phonies along the way, they make for some funny stories, and they have some lessons for you. And sometimes you have to go through those lessons. And so whatever comes your way is the lesson that you need with a relationship, with work, with where you end up in the world. There are places that I have loved tremendously and I haven't been able to go back to. Karma is what it is. And there's other places where I like them, but I find myself there over and over again. I'm not in love with the place. I just have connections and things that are meant to transpire. So just do your best to step into the not knowing and embrace that and be comfortable with it and see where that will take you. When you walk out the door and you have a little free time, just walk with just with the intention of let me be led to people that are on a spiritual journey. Let me be led to someone that I can be of service to. Because I think ultimately at the end of the day, I always think of as sit, meditate, serve, and surrender to divinity. And if you can do those things as much as you can, then your life's going to get a lot better. And you're going to stumble and fumble. It's normal. Just get up, dust yourself off, and immerse yourself back in this moment.
Beautiful, beautiful message to part on. You are the Spiritual Schmuck on
Yeah,
Instagram,
YouTube.
TikTok, YouTube.
No, just more, YouTube and TikTok. Instagram, I use Nomad for Hire, NOMADFORHIRE. But most of my stuff I do on YouTube and TikTok.
Wonderful. So people can find you there.
Yeah.
You have been an amazing guest. I've really loved it. I mean, it's like music to my ears sitting here listening to your stories. Yeah,
Oh, thank
amazing.
you.
Te'Devan,
I love sharing this stuff. I feel that I know some people sometimes they've also had the experiences that I've had. They're a little less forthcoming, and I understand that. I don't fault them, but I just feel that in a time where people feel so there's nothing else out there, I think to remind people that miracles are still a thing is important. It may not be the final goal, but it's a stepping stone. So
Beautiful.
that's what I would say.
Te'Devan, thank you so much. Thank you to the viewers and listeners. Take care, guys. Te'Devan, we'll
Yeah.
get you definitely back for part 2.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
This has been the Endless Possibilities Podcast, where the journey of spiritual awakening and energy healing unfolds. Gareth is a lifelong seeker of truth, a spiritual teacher and author, and it's his passion to delve into the profound world of consciousness. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we hope you've gotten something from it. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, the podcast is available on YouTube and all the major podcasting platforms. Find us on Instagram at _mother_force. Take care, and we'll see you soon on the Endless Possibilities Podcast.